Hello and welcome to part 16 of the Johnny Blender 3 series. In this section we're going to get into the Mesh Deform Modifier, which is one of my favorite modifiers because it allows you to take your model and really rubberize it, cartoonify it, stretch it out, do whatever while still maintaining the control that you have with the rig. Now, if you look at some of the Mesh Deform Modifier examples, if you've picked up the Big Buck Bunny DVD set or downloaded the files, you'll find that most of their models have the Mesh Deform. And it's really fun to play with. You can grab it and stretch the face out, whatever. And they have it encompassing the whole body. Well, that's good if you wanna exaggerate the whole body and things. But for Johnny here, we're just going to worry about exaggerating his head and his torso. His arms and legs, they're going to remain skinny and long and skinny. So our Mesh Deform modifier our Mesh Deform mesh only needs to encompass the head and torso. So let's go ahead and build that. Let's go and put our 3D cursor right here in the middle. And as soon as there we go. Shift A to add a new cube. And first thing I want to do is this is going to be kind of a controller cage. I don't really need to see the actual mesh. I just need to see the wire frame of the mesh. So let's go to our, well, we're already there, our object settings here, and go to display. Instead of textured, set to wire, just like the actual rig is. So now we're going to tab into edit mode, W, subdivide, let's do it 3 times. We're going to grab this side, go ahead and delete that, delete the vertices, and just do like we did when we were modeling the head. Add a mirror, and now we'll start modeling it. Go ahead and turn on clipping as well. Okay, so let's scale it on the Z-axis there and make it big enough to encompass the whole head and torso. And then we'll start editing it to, go ahead and turn on the connected proportional editing there. Set my influence up. And go ahead and start editing it to fit a little closer. The closer it fits, the more control you have. But don't get it too close, because if your model itself goes outside of the Mesh Deform, it can get ugly. So make sure you keep a nice padding around it. Okay, let's go to our side view, and let's select everything, move it up. There we go. Our front view is still separated. Yep. And let's go to our top view, round off those corners. Okay, now let's emphasize the head and neck area a little bit better. So let's put another loop in here. Actually about right there, we'll say, and let's put another one right there. Okay, we'll go ahead and scale that one down, make her fall off a little bit less. Let's grab this one and scale it down. The closer you can get it to those little nooks and crannies, the more detail you're going to have control over. Like I said, make sure you got a nice padding around all of your mesh. It includes all the chin and everything. Don't want anything sticking out. And also, the more detailed your deform cage is, the better control you're going to have over deforming the underlying mesh. So let's add another loop right there, another loop right here. So we got some more control over where the face can go, and why not another loop right there, and say one more right there. Oops, there we go. Tell you what, let's select everything and let's smooth it out just a little bit. A couple more, and I think that will do it. I think that covers everything. One way to check is to just turn that back to solid view and see if you see anything peeking out through it. And I don't, so we're good to go. Turn that back to wire. Okay. Now, if you were to render right now, you would see the solid view of this mesh. This is only for your viewport. So we don't want that rendering. So let's put it on its own layer. Gonna M, and I like to move it way over here to the top right, kind of get it out of the way. And then let's go ahead and shift select that so we can still mess with it. Okay, now we're going to apply the mesh to our, or apply the rig to our mesh. But first, let's go ahead and apply that mirror modifier. There we go. And then shift select any part of our rig, Control P, automatic weights, just like before. And you can see the rig now modifies the deform mesh. Okay. Now, to be able to deform the underlying mesh, you have to add a new modifier, the Mesh Deform Modifier, right there. And let's bump that up above subsurf. And the object is going to be this new box. Let's actually give it a name. Say cube. Let's say JB underscore deform. There we go. Okay, grab Johnny back. And that's a jacket. We'll have to do that on the jacket as well. But grab Johnny, object, JB deform. And we're going to give him a vertex group because, like I said, we don't want the arms and legs to deform. We just want the head and torso. So let's go in here, select everything on the hands and legs and arms, Control L, and there we go. And let's go back to our object data, create another new vertex group, and call this one No Deform. Maybe put an underscore in between. There we go. No deform. All right, assign those to that. Tab back out, and go to our modifiers, vertex group, no deform. There we go. And just like before, it's going to apply that to that group. So when you say invert, I guess you could select everything else and say deform, but either way works just fine. Okay, so now we're going to click dynamic, and we're going to bind this deform mesh to our rig, or to our underlying mesh. And it's going to take a few seconds to get that. Careful if if it locks up. Sometimes it does, but looks like it finished properly here. And now you'll see a problem. If we rotate the head, it's doing the same thing like we accidentally added two armatures, which essentially we did, because the underlying mesh here is now being deformed not only by the armature but also by the deform. So it's kind of doubling up on the movement there. So what we need to say is here on our armature, come back up here and apply this armature only to that no deform. And now the armature is only going to modify the arms and legs, and then the mesh deform is only going to modify the head and torso. So if we move this here, you can see it's moving part of the deform modifier. If we move that around, you can see it's stretching his face and things. So that's where a little bit more ingenuity comes into play when you're adding the deform mesh like around the neck and things. So we can edit this to work a little bit better by going into weight paint, say, and actually turn on X mirror so we're doing everything once. This whole thing here for our head, neck bone, maybe this guy here, and let's smooth that out. I don't want a solid red anywhere on here, so let's just, we could subtract, but I'll just go blur and just blur it out there. There we go. Chest bone. Let's get rid of that completely on the chin area there, any part of the head, and let's add it to this section here, and these guys. I guess I'll allow some redness down here. There we go. Head, it's all good. Neck, good. I guess we don't really need to deform the arms at all, so let's go subtract and set the strength way up. Completely, you don't need the arms on there at all. So I should have done that one for the right side as well. Yes. Legs, go ahead and get rid of those. The body's kind of acting independently of the arms and legs. They're just attached. Okay. So good, 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 good. Okay, so everything should deform a little bit better now. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so now if we want the eyeballs to follow along with the head, there's a couple of tricks we need to do. First off, let's tab into edit mode in the armature, and we need to add some bones for the eyeballs to follow along with. So actually, let's tab out of there. Let's grab one of the eyeballs, left one preferably, yes, and let's Shift S, add our cursor to the selected, so it puts our 3D cursor right there. Then we will add or grab our armature, tab into edit mode, Shift A to add a new bone. Let's grab that one, call it eyebone.l. There we go. And let's now grab the tip of it and Shift S, selection to cursor. There we go. Then we'll grab our translate manipulator and drag that out so we can see which direction it's pointing. Grab that, Control Shift S, scale it down, about like so. We don't need to drag it out that far. About right there will be fine. Okay, so let's copy that over to the other side. By doing the same technique, let's come out here, grab our eye, Shift S, cursor to selected, grab our bone, head bone, tab, and let's just copy this left one over, Shift D, and just drag it over until it lines up. I can kind of do it by eye, just kind of line it up there on that 3D cursor. There, a little bit. There we go. Okay, so now that should be lined up. Let's go ahead and rename that eyebone.r. There we go. Okay, so now we got our eyeballs, but we need to tell them where they're going to look. So let's grab both of those eyes. There we go. And let's Shift D, duplicate them forward on the y-axis. There we go. And let's go ahead and scale them up and then scale them down normally. So Alt Shift S to scale them. Actually scaled them towards each other, didn't it? Let me undo that. Okay. Get them to where we scaled them up, and then we'll go to scaler on individual origins and go ahead and scale them. Well, I just want to keep doing that. So let's go back to median point. Go to side view, zoom in here, grab those front sections like so, drag them back. Just want to flatten it out like so. Okay. So let's call these look at. So say look at dot L. Grab this one, look at dot R. Okay, and then rather than move those around individually, let's create another bone. Let's just Shift D this guy and just take off the dot R and say look at. And it created two of them. So let's go ahead and delete that out, last one. And since we deleted the dot R, we could go ahead and delete the left bone and not worry about the X mirror deleting the right bone because it's no longer a right bone. So let's move that up in between those two look-ats. Control-Alt-S to make it a little bigger, then Control-Alt-SX to make it bigger on the X-axis, and kind of just make sort of a binoculars looking type of thing. And then we'll grab those two, shift that guy, Control-P, parent them. There we go. So now I'm moving around. It's moving both of those. Okay, the way we get the eye bones to look at these is kind of the same way we got the elbows to follow along with the hands and the shins to follow with the feet, so on and so forth. We're going to add an IK chain to it, inverse kinematics. So we'll grab that first, shift select the eye, shift I, add IK to active bone, yes, and go ahead and give it a chain length of just 1 constraint. There we go. Chain length of 1. Do the same thing on the right side, shift I to active bone, chain length of 1. So there we go. Now you'll see that the eye bones follow along to where we move our look at target. Okay, so now the eyeballs, they're going to be parented to the rig, but not to the head bone, just to the basic rig itself. So, got to be careful because it'll probably move them around when we change the parenting structure. So let me go ahead and Shift S and say cursor to selected, just to put my 3D cursor exactly where it needs to go. Now I'm going to come over here to the parent, and we're going to say JB3 armature, and it's going to be as an object. And like I said, it moved the eyeball to the base of the rig, which is down here. So let's move that. Actually, since I put that 3D cursor right where I needed it, I'm going to go Shift S. I'm going to say selection to cursor. And it's going to pop it right back up where it needs to go. And we'll do the same thing on the right eye. Grab the eyeball itself. There we go. Shift S, cursor to selected, and then tell it to be JB3 armature as object, and then see it put it way down there as well at the origin of the rig, which is down there on the master control bone. Shift S, selection to cursor, so it puts those right back there. Okay, so now they're parented to the rig, which they need to be, but still they need to follow the eyeball bones. So we need to tell them to do that. In old tutorials, before I messed with the Mesh Deform, I would just parent them to the eyeball bones and they would work just fine. But if we want those to stretch along with everything else when we stretch the face out and everything, we need to go through this technique here. So what we need to do now is grab each bone and go to our constraints and add a copy rotation. And we're going to say copy the rotation of the JB3 armature of the eyebone.L. There we go. And it popped it around backwards, so we need to tell it to invert the Y. No? Invert the Z? No? Okay. Actually, once we go to local space with those, we don't really need to worry about offset. The invert is for when it's actually following. So now it's following the rotation of that bone. So when I move the look at, you'll see that it's following it, but on the x-axis looks like it needs to be inverted, so we'll do that there. So that's what the invert is for. So let's go ahead and invert that and there, and now it's following along as it should. Now we just need to do the same thing on the right eyeball. Add constraint, copy rotation, JB3 armature, eyebone.R, local invert X. So now when we move our look at, our eyeballs follow along. However, if we rotate our head, they still don't move. And actually we need to tell the eyeball bones to parent to the head as well. So keep the offset. There we go. Okay. So the eyeballs match the rotation since they're looking, you know, the actual eye bones are still looking at those look at targets and the head's moving around. You can see the eyeballs are rotating around too. But what we need the eyeballs to follow along with the head. How do we do that? Well, we just add the Mesh Deform Modifier to those as well. So we go add modifiers, add Mesh Deform right there. Go ahead and pop that up to the top of the stack. Object JB3 or JB Deform, and go ahead and set dynamic and bind. Since it's the eyeball, it shouldn't take near as long as it took for the body, so it should be 3, 2, 1. Not responding. Come on, Blender, don't lock up on me now. There we go. Speaking of, go ahead and save. Save often when you're doing this because it likes to crash Blender. So anyways, so it bound, and once it binds, you have the option to unbind it and make any modifications. So let's do the same thing over here. Add the Mesh Deform, pop that up to the top of the stack. Object is going to be JB3 armature. Oops, not JB3 armature, JB Deform. There we go. Dynamic, bind. You know, the precision could actually be set down a little bit for the eyeballs, but should be fine for this. And there we go. So now, if we move the head around, the eyeballs follow. They're now part of that deform. Okay, so what does this deform do, you might be asking? It looks like it's just like a normal rig. Well, for the most part it is, but it's one step better. Let me show you something cool. Let's go to our object data, and let's set a shape key. Let's create one, just the basis, then we'll create a new one, and let's call this one pan upside the head. So what we're going to do is flatten part of the mesh here to where it looks like someone smacked him upside the head with a pan, like a frying pan. So let's grab these guys here and watch what happens when we move these vertices, I'm going to scale them on the x-axis. Actually, turn off mirror. Turn that off. Okay, and I'm going to scale that, and you see the underlying mesh is deforming to match it. How cool is that? And we can smack it upside the head, and boom. So I say, pan upside the head, smack! And it flattens that out. So then, you know, since the eyeballs are matching with it too, they're still following along, they're deformed, but they still rotate perfectly in their sockets the way they're supposed to, and the head and everything else follows along with this Mesh Deform. So, that's pretty cool. Like I said, it's one of my favorite modifiers because it's just so fun to play with. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and... Well, you know what? I'll go ahead and save that. But, okay, that's going to be it for part 16. In part 17, we're going to get into creating some facial expressions with shape keys on Johnny himself. Just some basic facial expressions: eyebrows up, down, eyelids closed, open, smile, frown, so on and so forth. And we'll create some new, some more bones to our rig to control these facial expressions via shape key drivers. So, just a little something to look forward to. So now that we have our rig all set up with the pan upside the head, let's do smack. Ouch. So, so that's just fun to play with. Like I said, it's really fun. So, we got all that set. So next time we'll work on the face and the facial expressions, and maybe even play some more with this Mesh Deform. So, thanks for watching. I'll catch you in part 17.